Forbidden Planet is the grandfather of modern science fiction. A film where a crew of astronauts lands on an alien world and discovers that the most dangerous monster in the universe is hiding inside the human mind. But even after 7 decades, this film is still hiding secrets. Did you know the original ending let everyone walk away alive with no sacrifice and no monster from the subconscious? Or that the invisible creature has a hidden facial feature that reveals exactly who created it? Today, we're uncovering 16 hidden truths about Forbidden Planet 1956, including how this movie helped inspire the Star Trek and Star Wars universe. Number 1. The ending that was erased. The movie ends with Dr. Morbius confronting the monster from his own subconscious, sacrificing himself so his daughter and the crew can escape. It is one of the most psychologically complex endings in 1950s science fiction. But the original version of this story had none of that. In 1952, writers Irving Bloch and Alan Adler wrote a treatment called Fatal Planet, and it was set on Mercury, not Altair 4th. There was no ancient Krell civilization, no underground machine, and no monster from the id. The danger was just a native, invisible ape-like creature living on Mercury. And in that version, the story ended more like a straight rescue adventure. The hero, John Grant, saves Dr. Morbius and his daughter with the help of a robot built by the Doctor, and everyone escapes alive. Nobody has to die. Nobody has to confront their own darkest impulses. Cyril Hume later rewrote that rescue ending into something much darker, turning a normal space adventure into a tragedy about the monster inside man himself. Number 2. The movie that inspired Star Trek. In the opening scene of Forbidden Planet, as the starship approaches Altair 4th, the navigator announces that they'll reach their destination at 1701. That number, 1701, would later become one of the most famous registration numbers in science fiction history. The NCC 1701 printed across the body of the Star Trek's USS Enterprise. When Star Trek was still being developed, its creator Gene Roddenberry reportedly showed Forbidden Planet to his team at the Desilu studio lot. He even wrote a memo to his production designer, telling him to study Forbidden Planet's spaceship design closely, not necessarily to copy it, but to spark ideas for Star Trek's own futuristic look. And yet, when a reporter later asked Roddenberry directly if Star Trek was influenced by Forbidden Planet, he flatly denied it. The evidence, though, is right there on screen, in a number spoken a full decade before Captain Kirk ever sat in the captain's chair. Number 3. The monster's hidden face. During the blaster battle near the end of the film, the invisible id monster briefly becomes visible, outlined in crackling red energy as the crew fires at it. Most viewers only see a roaring beast, but if you look closely at the animation, there's a detail hiding in plain sight. The creature has a small goatee beard. That's the exact same facial feature that distinguishes Dr. Morbius from every other character in the film. This was a deliberate choice by animator Joshua Meador, a Disney veteran who was loaned to MGM specifically for this sequence. Meador sketched each frame by hand on translucent vellum paper, photographed them in high contrast, reversed the images into negative, and tinted them red. The technique made the creature almost invisible, which also made his hidden clue nearly impossible to catch. It was a visual confession buried in the animation itself, telling you who the monster really was before anyone in the film figured it out. Number 4. The alien planet built on land of Oz. Forbidden Planet was filmed on an MGM soundstage in Culver City, California. But this wasn't just any soundstage. It was the same one that had hosted The Wizard of Oz 17 years earlier. And the connection goes deeper than shared real estate. The garden set where Altair tends to her animals on Altair 4 was a redressed version of the Munchkin Village set from Oz. So the alien landscape of a distant planet was built on the same stage where Dorothy once followed the yellow brick road. Even the technology overlapped. The operator inside the Robbie suit wore a special body harness, basically a metal support frame with padded leather shoulder straps, to help carry the costume's 120-pound weight. The same basic design had been used years earlier to suspend the flying monkey actors in The Wizard of Oz, two of the most iconic films in Hollywood history, connected by a shared stage, a shared set, and a shared harness. Number 5. The machine that built an empire. The Krell's subterranean machinery, those enormous cavern-like shafts stretching into what seems like infinity, became one of the most influential visual concepts in science fiction history. When the special effects crew on Babylon 5 was tasked with designing the interior of their Epsilon 3 Great Machine, they stated directly that the Krell's machine was a definite influence on their design. John Davison, the executive producer of RoboCop, explicitly wanted the interior of the OCP corporate headquarters to resemble the Krell's underground complex, and film historians have noted a striking visual similarity between the Krell architecture and the vast mechanical interiors of the Death Star in Star Wars. A single set, designed in 1955 for a film that barely broke even at the box office, went on to shape the look of science fiction for the next half-century. The Krell built a machine to give form to their thoughts. In a way, MGM did the same thing. Number 6. The Monster's Darkest Secret. The film establishes that the id monster is a projection of Dr. Morbius's subconscious, a creature born from his hidden desire to protect his daughter Altair from the outside world. But multiple film critics and historians have pointed to a much darker reading of that subtext. Morbius has kept Altair completely isolated her entire life. She has never met another human being. He has given her artificial pets instead of allowing her to have real relationships. And the id monster doesn't attack randomly. It manifests specifically when young men show romantic or sexual interest in Altair. The monster is driven by jealousy toward the men who might take his daughter away from him. Several critics have noted that this pattern suggests the subconscious desire driving the creature isn't just protectiveness, it's possessiveness that crosses into something far more unsettling. The film never says it outright, but the subtext is there in every scene, hiding in plain sight, just like the monster itself. Number 7. The scene Robbie never got to drive. When the 50th anniversary DVD was released, it included deleted scenes recovered from a workprint that had been discovered in 1977. Most workprints are destroyed after a film is completed, but somehow Forbidden Planets survived. Among the recovered footage was a complete sequence that had been entirely removed from the final cut. In it, Robbie the Robot drives Commander Adams and his men across the desert in an atomic car, speeding them toward their first encounter with Dr. Morbius. 9 minutes of additional test footage also survived, showing alternate takes of the spaceship landing, the id monster's footprints being formed in the ground, and matte paintings of the Krell machine stretching into infinity. Number 8. The Robot That Followed Asimov's Laws. In the early days of science fiction, many robot stories followed the same frightening pattern. Humans create a machine, and the machine eventually rebels against its creator. This idea became known as the Frankenstein complex, the fear that mankind's own creations would one day turn against them. But in 1942, legendary science fiction writer Isaac Asimov introduced a very different idea. He published his 3 laws of robotics, a set of rules stating that a robot cannot harm a human, must obey human orders, and must protect itself in that order of priority. These laws had appeared in stories and novels, but they had never been dramatized in a major motion picture. Screenwriter Cyril Hume took those laws out of the pages of science fiction and put them directly into Robbie's programming, and he made them essential to the story, not just a piece of sci-fi decoration. When Morbius orders Robbie to destroy the id monster, the robot locks up and shuts down completely. The reason is devastating. The monster is a projection of Morbius's own subconscious mind, which means destroying it would require killing a human, and that violates the first law. It was one of the earliest moments in cinema where a robot's moral code became the dramatic turning point of an entire film. Number 9. The Animals That Were Never Alive. In the film, Altair 4 has Earth-like animals. There's a pet tiger, deer, monkeys. They seem like ordinary creatures transplanted to an alien world. But the novelization reveals something deeply unsettling. When Dr. Ostro dissects one of these animals, he discovers its internal structure is completely unlike any real biological organism. The tiger, the deer, the monkey, none of them were ever truly alive in the normal sense. They are all conscious creations by Dr. Morbius, projected into existence by the Krell's great machine, which can materialize matter in any form. Morbius made them as companions for his daughter Altair, creatures that only outwardly resemble Earth animals. The film hints at this, but never says it directly. The novel makes it explicit, and it reframes every scene with those animals as something far more disturbing. A father building artificial life to keep his daughter company, in a world where he's made sure she'll never meet another human being. Number 10. The $5 Million Robot. In November 2017, the original Robbie the Robot suit went up for auction at Bonhams in New York. What followed was a four-way bidding war conducted entirely by phone, with bids leaping from $3.6 million to $4 million in a single jump. When the hammer finally fell, Robbie sold for $5.375 million, setting a world record for the most expensive movie prop ever sold at auction. The seller was filmmaker William Malone, who had purchased the suit in 1980 when the Movie World Museum closed. Malone had spent decades maintaining and preserving it, which was no small task. During Robbie's years on display at the museum from 1971 to 1980, the suit had been frequently vandalized by visitors. A prop that cost $125,000 to build in 1956 had appreciated more than 40 times over because it represented something no other prop could: the birth of the modern movie robot. Number 11. The poster that lied to everyone. The most famous image associated with Forbidden Planet shows Robbie the Robot carrying a struggling, scantily clad woman in his arms. It looks exactly like every other 1950s monster movie poster, the kind where the creature menaces the helpless damsel. There's just one problem. This scene never happens anywhere in the film, not even close. Robbie is one of the most gentle, helpful characters in the entire movie. He never threatens anyone, never picks up Altair, never acts as a menace. The poster was pure marketing, designed to trick audiences who might not otherwise buy a ticket for a cerebral science fiction film into thinking they were getting a standard creature feature. It worked, but it also means that for 70 years, the single most recognized image of this film has been depicting something that never actually occurred on screen. Number 12. The cut that was never finished. Film editor Ferris Webster was a 3-time Oscar nominee with a reputation for precision. He assembled the rough cut of Forbidden Planet and expected to spend weeks refining it into a polished final version. That never happened. MGM screened the rough cut for a preview audience to test whether viewers would accept the experimental electronic soundtrack. The audience loved it. They loved it so much that MGM decided to release the film essentially as is in its rough cut state. Webster asked repeatedly to be allowed to finish his edit. The studio refused. According to film historian Bill Warren, Webster was bothered for years that he never got to properly complete the film. If you've ever noticed certain takes toward the end of Forbidden Planet that feel slightly too long or slightly too abrupt, that's why. You're watching a film that was never meant to be finished in the form you're seeing it. Number 13. The denial that fooled nobody. Gene Roddenberry didn't just watch Forbidden Planet. He studied it. During Star Trek's development, Roddenberry wrote a memo, later published in David Alexander's authorized biography, instructing his production designer to take another very hard look at Forbidden Planet's spaceship, its configurations, its controls, and its instrumentation. He also considered casting 3 Forbidden Planet actors for Star Trek roles. Leslie Nielsen and Warren Stevens were both candidates for the role of Captain, and Anne Francis was listed as a possibility for the character of Vina. Stevens would eventually appear as a guest star in the Star Trek episode By Any Other Name, and the connection even reached into Star Trek's own universe. The name Altair IV, the same planet name used in Forbidden Planet, later appeared in the Next Generation episode Eye of the Beholder, where a Starfleet medical file identified Darian Wallace as having been born on Altair IV. Yet Roddenberry never admitted that Star Trek was influenced by the film. The paper trail tells a very different story. Number 14. The drunk who nearly destroyed Robbie. Robbie the Robot cost a staggering $125,000 to build, roughly 7% of the entire film's budget. The suit was a marvel of engineering, constructed from royalite plastic, metal, rubber, and acetate, powered by 5 motors salvaged from World War II military surplus. It weighed 120 pounds, and it nearly ended up in pieces on the studio floor. Originally, a short props man named Frankie Carpenter was supposed to operate the suit, but because Robbie was considered a major on-screen character, Screen Actors Guild rules meant the role had to be played by a professional union actor, not just a crew member. So MGM hired Frankie Darro, a former child star who stood 5'3" and had the right build. The problem was that Darrow had contracted malaria during military service and had been self-medicating with alcohol for years. He kept showing up to get drunk. After he nearly toppled over inside the suit and came close to destroying it, the studio quietly replaced him with Carpenter for the rest of the shoot. The Screen Actors Guild was apparently never informed. Number 15, the score that shouldn't exist. In 1955, MGM hired film composer David Rose to write a traditional orchestral score for Forbidden Planet. Rose recorded a main title theme at the studio in early 1956. Then studio head Dor Shari fired him. Rose was reportedly so upset that he later destroyed the tapes of his work. Only fragments survive, buried in the original theatrical trailer. With no composer and a film that needed music, producer Nicholas Nafak turned to an unlikely pair. Bibe and Louis Barron were experimental electronic musicians from Greenwich Village who had worked with avant-garde composer John Cage. They were originally hired to provide just 20 minutes of sound effects. But Nafak was so impressed with their work that he expanded their role to score the entire film. The result was cinema's first all-electronic musical score, but because the Barons didn't belong to the musicians' union, their work couldn't legally be called music. The credits listed as electronic tonalities, which also made them permanently ineligible for an Academy Award. Number 16. Walt Disney's Secret Weapon. The It Monsters animation is one of the most striking visual effects in 1950s cinema, and it exists because Walt Disney lent MGM one of his best people. Joshua Meador was a veteran Disney effects animator who had worked on Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, and Bambi. Disney personally presented the Forbidden Planet assignment to Meador as a creative challenge. Meador's technique was unlike anything that had been done before. Instead of traditional cell animation, he sketched each frame directly in black pencil on translucent vellum paper. Each drawing was photographed in high contrast, so only the boldest lines survived, then reversed into photographic negative and tinted red. The result was a creature that seemed to exist between visibility and invisibility, its body outlined only by the energy of the force field and blaster beams striking it. The monster was considered so terrifying that in some US states, its image was actually edited out of the film to avoid frightening children. Forbidden Planet asked a question in 1956 that science fiction is still trying to answer. What happens when a civilization becomes powerful enough to make its darkest thoughts real? 7 decades later, that question feels more relevant than ever. If this video surprised you, let us know in the comments which fact caught you off guard. And if you want more hidden truths about the films that shaped science fiction, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one.